Part 17. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 166. Minamoto Shinzen, Kinyu Fengjian was a little surprised. Of course he knew this person, Amamiya Mai's cheap sister, who was always unlucky. Because of the Genji Group's Godson project, she became the second member of the Minamoto family to successfully obtain an adjusted gene after Amamiya Mai. But that's not a good thing. Although she withstood the chance of death from the gene editing experiment, her lower body was still paralyzed due to the sequelae after the success. Asahi Kazuma has seen many situations like this, but not in this simulation, but in the future simulated by Hien. At that time, in order to develop power in this field as quickly as possible, countries around the world used some special methods. Especially the American camp, they have no scruples. I don't know how many medical companies are conducting human experiments on Asin's group of lower-class people who have been pued by Kshatriyas on Asin's land. There is no such thing as a little cover-up idea. This experiment that spread all over the world was not without any results. There were still some experimental subjects that survived successfully, but they only survived. Although they can exert their talents to adjust genes, many of them often suffer from functional disorders in various parts of the body due to gene activation. Most of these things are not recorded in detail, and most of them are presented as research data in various technical knowledge of Asahi Kazuma and Shiina Yuin, as the general background of the technology. For example, an adjuster who possesses a talent that is close to clairvoyance is blind. The adjuster, whose reproductive capacity is fully developed and can get pregnant with just one slide, is so necrotic. The adjuster who mastered telekinesis became a vegetative state. Kinyu Kazuma has seen many strange cases. Most of these people were humanely destroyed, but their genetic samples and experimental data were preserved. In the early days when the world was unable to determine individual talents by adjusting genes, they died silently. Later, after Asahi Kazuma regained consciousness, together with Shiina Kane, who had begun to study the trait talents displayed by the adjustment genes, they successfully deciphered the expression of the adjustment genes 100 years ago. The ultimate result is the famous gene codex. That's right, it was the final product of the two's black technology that was still in effect in Asahi Kazuma's body to this day. It was the final result of the genetic equation that could stabilize more than 20 conventionally adjusted genes at the same time. Although there are still some adjustment genes that cannot be observed, most of the talents of adjusting genes cannot be hidden in front of it. Even in those rare cases, the gene codex can directly detect the talents of adjusting genes exist. For example, one's own special adjustment genes. It is actually quite common for people to be paralyzed like Minamoto Shinzuru. One of the keys to the cooperation between Asahi Kazuma and Amamiya Mai is that Asahi Kazuma agreed to use his skills to negotiate with Amamiya Mai in order to gain Minamoto's support and improve the possibility of becoming the leader of Genji. But he didn't expect that Yuan Zhenxian would suddenly find his head. Amamiya Mai, you idiot, wouldn't just go to Minamoto Shinzuru to reveal your secrets, would you? Mr. Kinyu, can't you come up and sit down? I am just a paralyzed and weak woman. I won't let you feel such a big threat, right? We are here with sincerity. The sudden arrival of Minamoto Shinzen somewhat ruined your plan. Fortunately, you did not feel any malice in her, and in the end you chose to get in the car. In other words, only by getting in the car can you really hold the little princess of Genji hostage. However, after getting in the car, the little princess behaved very well, and could even be said to be a little weak. You watched her carefully push her body away from the car door with her hands so that you could come in and take a seat. Then, just such a small movement made her sweat a little. Obviously, the impact of the Shenzi experiment on her is far beyond your imagination. She is really weak. After seeing Lee getting in the car, the girl showed a big smile on her face and said that she had wanted to meet you for a long time, and now that she could see you, she was very happy. You don't care about this and directly ask her why she came to stop you today. The scene unfolds. With a weak smile on his face, Minamoto said helplessly, I came here mainly to see Mr. Asaba. After all, Minamoto-san disappeared for a while. I was really worried. Later I heard that she had an affair with you. For related cooperation, I just want to see who her partners are. Heh, are you here to threaten me? Qian Yufengjian didn't care. Only those without strength will be easily threatened and given up. He is obviously not the kind of person who can be threatened. Gen's underlying meaning is very clear, which is to directly tell Asaba Kazuma that the matter between him and Amamiyamai cannot be hidden from too many people. Although Amamiyamai returned home smoothly, something unspeakable did happen to someone. I am afraid Amamiyamai also knows this, she cannot hide it from everyone in the family. She had mentioned it to Asaba Kazuma before, hoping that he could pretend to be her mate, or at least be her prospective fiancé for a while, so that it would be less likely to arouse suspicion from Genji. At that time, Asaba Kazuma paid attention to Amamiyamai's tone and expression when she spoke, and found that she did not have Stockholm Syndrome, but really spoke about this topic in a very indifferent tone. It seems that because of some internal matters in Genji, letting him pretend to be her fiancé can achieve the woman's strategic purpose and even hide some of their cooperation matters. Obviously, this benefits both her and him. However, Asaba Kazuma cruelly refused. Amamiyamai's expression was very surprised at that time, and Asaba Kazuma found it funny in retrospect. After all, in Amamiyamai's view, the opinion she put forward really didn't have much thought, but it was more helpful to Asaba Kazuma. After all, no matter what, the reason why Asaba Kazuma and her were able to cooperate in the first place was really disgraceful. He simply pointed a gun at Amamiyamai's weak points and threatened her into agreeing. It's okay if this matter doesn't come out. Once it comes out, if she doesn't stop him, Genji may really attack Asaba Kazuma directly. It's not that the Genji family attaches much importance to Amamiyamai, but as an ancient family and a contemporary conglomerate, the Genji does not allow to be easily bullied by outsiders. It's not like America's mold is stationed in Japan and can point a gun directly at their heads. Even if it's a mold, it actually only bullies the local civilians. It really doesn't have any conflicts with established families like the Genji, although it doesn't give them much face. Is it the same thing that mold can point a gun at Japanese people and you, a civilian, threaten my family? Amamiya didn't need to think twice to know what some old people in Genji were thinking. In this case, she was actually helping Amamiyamai. Even with the most vicious thoughts, as her honorary fiancé, at least he was interested and wanted to use her as a cannon. He was concerned about the feelings of the people around him, so why should this man disagree? But he refused. Whether it will arouse the fear of Genji, that is something you need to consider. Whether the impact of the previous incident can be eliminated has not much to do with me. These were Asaba Kazuma's exact words at that time. All I can say is, it sucks for a while and feels good for a while, and it feels good all the time if it sucks. In this simulation, he focused on being casual. If you want to do it, do it, if you don't want to, don't do it. But as the saying goes, there are gains and losses, and there is a price to pay for playing games casually. Just like now, he has gained happiness, but lost his worries. The memories evoked by Minamoto's string made a relaxed smile appear on Asaba Kazuma's lips. Seeing Amamiyamai, who always likes to hold her head high, showing a confused and helpless expression, it was so happy, and to a certain extent, it even provoked him to have more emotional fluctuations than that incident. Zhenxian didn't say much, but quietly looked at Qian Yufengma's face, thinking about something subtly. For a long time, seeing Kinyu Kazuma ignoring her, she could only take the initiative to say, "Mr. Kinyu, we have done some research on you, and I have to say that you are indeed a genius. To be able to achieve such achievements at such an age without accumulating scientific research experience on a large scale is really a young genius. Not to mention that your company has made a lot of money in recent times. So, what do you want to say? Asaba Kazuma smiled calmly. There is no need to show such a weak expression, Gen, I don't like this, to make that guy Amamaya so afraid. Guys, I'm not going to let my guard down just because someone smiles at me. The expression on Minamoto's face did not change at all, he just sighed and said, it seems that because of my sister, Mr. Asaba has a deep misunderstanding of me. Don't misunderstand me, you know it yourself, tell me directly. If nothing happens, I will leave. Wait a minute. As soon as Asaba Kazuma made a move to prepare to get out of the car, Genma spoke, actually, I came here this time mainly because I wanted to know what kind of cooperation Mr. Asaba has reached with my sister, whether it is I can provide better conditions for any kind of cooperation. In fact, Mr. Asaba should be able to notice that Sister Mayumi's situation in the family is not ideal. If you want to go on for a longer time, it is not impossible to find another partner. After all, I am the true appointed head of the Genji family. A sarcastic smile appeared on Asaba Kazuma's lips. Of course I can see that her condition is not very good, but what does this have to do with my cooperation with you? Zhenxian narrowed his eyes and smiled brighter. It is impossible for Genji to be handed over to Sister Mayumi. Her character is not suitable for leading the family. Asayu Kazuma smiled, what does it have to do with me? What you Genji want to do is your business. Since I promised to only cooperate with her, I will not change partners easily. It doesn't matter how you, Genji, think about profit distribution behind your back. It doesn't matter whether you plan to hand over the family legacy to my Amamaya or not. It doesn't matter whether I maintain a long-term cooperative relationship with you or not. All I care about now is whether I am happy or not. If it makes me happy, I will look twice at her. For example, if she doesn't make me happy, I will get away as far as possible. I am not interested in knowing. Genzan Xian shook his head, Mr. Asaba has a deep opinion of me. Asaba Kazuma sneered, logically speaking, you Genji and Amamaya have spent more time together. Even an outsider like me can see that she, Amamaya, doesn't like to be called Minamoto Mayumi. Can't you see? Come out. Kinya Kazuma narrowed his eyes and smiled and said, I'm afraid it's not that you can't see it, but that you never cared about her feelings from the beginning. Her thoughts, her self-esteem, her pride, everything she values, are insignificant to you. Do you know why I choose to cooperate with her? Do you really think I can't guess the dirty things within your family? Yuan Zhenzhen was silent for a moment. At this moment, the aura coming out of Asahi Kazuma made her feel astonished. It was as if the person standing in front of her was not a young man who was 1 year older than her, but a young man who had already taken control of the power. People who have been in high positions for many years are average. She pursed her lips for a moment and showed a relieved smile. If you think so, then I somewhat understand your thoughts. In fact, the main reason I came here this time is to understand your development in some special aspects. After all, you have also seen my body, which has really troubled me over the years. My sister's cooperation with you on this kind of project can easily trigger my sensitive nerves. It is indeed presumptuous to come here to test it this time. Her face, which was smiling like a lady, gradually revealed a strange and cold smile. However, I have changed my mind now. If my sister didn't pose much of a threat to me before, now, I have to admit that she has indeed grasped my pain points and can threaten me. Mr. Kinyu, since you are ready to stand on her side, then I will go a little too far on my side. I hope you will not have too many ideas during this period. I am still willing to cooperate with you, only if you give up your support for your sister. Qianyu was speechless in the wind, and the car fell into silence for a while. But the next moment, Asaba Kazuma's face showed a cold smile that was even worse than that of Minamoto Mizuru. It's really interesting. This seems good. Can I think you are provoking me? The hair on the hair of the female bodyguard sitting in the car in front stood on end, and she wanted to take action immediately. But the one who was faster than her was Asahi Kazuma. Almost instantly, the two bodyguards in the small vehicle who had taken out their weapons and were about to take action lost their ability to resist. Asaba Kazuma's strong hand slowly passed over Genma's body. Yuan Zhengxian's body trembled slightly, but in the end he didn't move. He just smiled and watched him do it. This is a domineering man. I finally understand why Sister Mayumi has no way to resist you. I've always been a Mayumi-san. I really can't tell how much respect you have for your sister in your words. It's a bit disgusting to hear. There is no way. She looks very strong, but the inferiority and fear in her bones have not been eliminated. However, this is not incomprehensible. The shadow left by the Shenzi plan is too heavy for her, which is different from someone like me who took the initiative to enter the game. Just the same, she is a victim. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huixiang. Chapter 167. The communication between you and Minamoto no Shine broke up on bad terms. You got out of the car and pulled Shianakane away from the scene. Shianakane, who was originally a little sad, looked at you anxiously, wanting to know what happened. You told her part of what happened between Amamiya and Genma, and she was silent for a while. There are rumors about the disputes within the Genji group among small groups, but considering Genji's thoughts, most of the time, no one deliberately collects them, so it is difficult to fully understand the inside story. And now, the tip of this behemoth iceberg is coming to you. Shianakane's first reaction is worrying whether you will be involved in the Genji insider story. You noticed that Shianayuan's attention was temporarily diverted to your personal safety, and instead temporarily forgot about the matter between you and Ishihara Rina. An idea quickly came to your mind. You chose. Tell Shianakane that you have tasted Amamiya for the first time, and it's hard to let her go now. Tell Shianakane that Amamiya decided to participate in the fight between her and Rina, which is beyond his control. Immediately pick up Shianauman and carry her to the Love Hotel, planning to tell them your decision to form a consortium and tie them both to you after Yunbai Yuji. Free simulation. Hey guys, what is the simulation all about? Chien Kazuma finally felt something was wrong. According to the rules he summarized in the previous simulations of Rina and Hien, the more frequently branch options appear, it should mean that he is also on the right path. But this fallen line has several branch options. The frequency of this branch option has already caught up with the frequency of Rina and Hien successfully passing it. If he follows the rules he originally summarized, wouldn't it mean? For Amamiya, is the fallen line the real destination? If you want to unlock the perfect ending with Amamiya, do you have to be cruel to Hungruo? Chien Kazuma was really shocked. You are a love simulator, not a book simulator. Why has it developed to this point now? Could it be that your Amamiya has a big problem? Asaba Kazuma secretly cursed at Amamiya. If Amamiya knew about this, she might just find a way to pick up the scissors and click it while Asaba Kazuma, the scumbag, was sleeping on her. But no matter what, option 1 is the answer to death, at least for him who wants to maintain the relationship with Shianayuan. It is definitely the answer to death. Kane, who was already in great pain because of Ishihara Rina's existence, God knows if he will be ruined directly because of this incident. The result of being ruined is to send it, and send it in a big way. Option 2 seems to be a good choice, at least from the perspective of breaking the deadlock in Shura Field, it seems to be quite good. Introducing a foreign aid like Amamiya to stir up the nerves of Rina and Yuan. If it works well, letting Rina and Yuan form a strategic alliance may have miraculous effects. After all, both women actually have a slight disadvantage against Amamiya. The identity given to Amamiyamai by the Genji group was a great blessing to her. But, it is precisely for this reason that the seemingly great identity is the most unlikely reason for Asaba Kazuma to accept it. The reason is very simple. Asaba Kazuma has already planned to build his own business empire, and the land of Japan is filled with a strong concept of authority. It is different from the previous life of our own Daxia. To a large extent, our own Daxia still belongs to the competition relationship of the free market. America looks like a free market, but reality tells you that America wants its own freedom, not the freedom of others. Not to mention Japan as a country that was forcibly opened by black ships. There is no such thing as free competition. Every field is the domain of local clans, ancient families, backward financial groups, and even the emperor's capital. As long as he does not change his purpose, one day, when his company develops to a certain level, he will inevitably ignite the flames of war on the heads of those consortiums. At that time, there is no such thing as fair competition, only the most bloody and cruel fight to the death. Therefore, if we only consider it from the perspective of interests, Amamiyamai is actually Asaba Kazuma's enemy. If it was just a cooperative relationship, that would be fine. After all, Amamiyamai was at a disadvantage in Genji's competition. It would be beneficial to her to harm Genji's interests and please herself. In this way, she can get the benefits from the Genji group, and Amamiyamai can also use her tiger skin to increase her voice in Genji. Provided, their relationship is limited to being partners. So if he really chooses option, it means that the best way of cooperation between the two must be broken. If not, how could Rina and Yuine be in serious crisis? At that time, I am afraid that Amamiyamai will publicly announce that she has made a lifelong commitment to Asaba Kazuma, using her own reputation in exchange for the opportunity to completely suppress Rina and Yuine. At that time, it was no longer the problem of Shura Field, but the problem that he needed to consider whether he might be hit with a knife. This is not a daily routine of Hachitriu love. It is even more impossible for Asaba Kazuma to let Amamiyamai, as an outsider, really make Rina and Yuine sad. This is really funny. Asaba Kazuma wanted to test the bottom line of the two women, but was afraid of hurting them in the simulation. What can be done? Of course, it's because of yourself that it's time to insult my Amamiya. So. His eyes looked at option. Sin, I didn't expect that this was the only option available in the end. Asaba Kazuma secretly thought, is this damn love simulation going to just throw in a bunch of text to simulate the plot and skip it directly? Choose. You and Shiana Yuine were walking on the way home. You talked about how you two met, and softly teased Uman about his childish behavior in the past. During this period, Shiana Kane kept frowning, wondering what she was thinking about. Suddenly, when passing by the Love Hotel, you stopped, rested your head on Shiana Kane's shoulder, and told her seriously, you or I will never give up on her. Perhaps aware of your twinkling gaze, Shiana Yuine looked at the Love Hotel hesitantly. She knows that you are a responsible person. If you really choose to carry a girl's future, she will definitely try her best to hold on through gritted teeth. Sneak a step equals take advantage. This is the goal in Shiana Uman's mind. For a moment, her heart moved. If you steal a fishy cat, you will steal a fishy cat. Getting the fish is the most important thing. It just so happened that you suddenly held her hand and said seriously that you wanted to prove it to her. There was a flash of struggle in her heart, but in the end she reluctantly agreed. You have entered a love hotel. The scene unfolds. Shiana Kane pursed her lips and said, have you ever been to such a place with Miss Ishihara? Kinya Kazuma shook his head. This is really not the case. As far as Rina's house is concerned, it's better to go directly to Rina's house than to go to a love hotel. Anyway, there's no one around and it's safe enough. So he had never been to a place like a love hotel with her. Shiana Kane pouted, lay down on the soft bed, and said lazily, Kazuma, please take off your socks for me. Asaba Kazuma glanced at her in surprise. Shianayuin seemed to be a little too proactive today. However, Asahi Kazuma was still very interested in her slender feet. When he helped her take off her socks, his eyes subconsciously focused on those rosy and slender feet that could be placed in the palm of his hand. He gently lifted his feet and suddenly thought of Rina. Speaking of which, for some reason, Rina took care of her feet, which is rare in real life. His hobby was still the influence left over from Rina before. Now that Rina has taken better care of her feet in reality, he is more interested in it. However, the details of Rina and Yuan's feet were still different, which gave Asahi Kazuma a lot of mental pleasure. After Asahi Kazuma finished playing with her, he went to take a bath to calm down. Normally he can tolerate it, but in this soft water bed and pink lighting atmosphere, he always feels a little bit hot on the face and feels that his resistance has dropped a lot. After coming out of the shower, he gently rubbed Shianakane's face and said, "Hien, go take a shower. Let's all calm down a little bit, and then we'll talk about the current situation." Shianakane glanced at him playfully, feeling that her sweetheart wanted to say something interesting. She was thoughtful, picked up her pajamas and ran to the bathroom. For a long time, Asahi Kazuma didn't see Shianayuin coming out, and she frowned, a little worried that she might have had an accident in the bathroom. She walked over and knocked on the door. Shianayuin's low voice came from the bathroom, "Do you want to come in?" Kinyu Kazuma's heart trembled, and she almost pushed the door open and went in. But he endured it. He had something very important to discuss with Shianakane today. Going in now was just for fun, but it would most likely affect his happy life in the future. So he said without hesitation, "As long as you're fine, don't soak in the bath for too long, something could happen easily." At this time, the bathroom door was suddenly opened, and Shianakane's little head popped out from behind the door. She said with a smile, "Then help me get the wet wipes in the bag. I'm about to melt from the high temperature inside." She also deliberately held her face, as if she wanted to emphasize her melted and pitiful posture. It's a pity that that face was filled with a sweet smile, without any trace of pity. It looked, actually a little cute. "You think you are ice cream and it melts." Kinyu Kazuma knocked her head angrily and glanced at her subconsciously. Then he saw Shianakane leaning out directly. Without any surprise, he had already expected that his cane was already wearing pajamas. Unlike Rina, who always acts according to her own preferences, Yuan is much more naughty than her. This operation tickled his heart, and he didn't know where she saw it. Especially the hair that was spread out just after taking a shower. It seemed to be carefully arranged and scattered behind her in a unique and beautiful way, he said subconsciously. "You look great with your hair loose." Shianakane was slightly startled, and a blush flashed across his face. "In the past, you often had a single ponytail, but now it's really rare for me to have a ponytail like this." Shianakane snorted and said, You lie." Her cheeks were slightly red. "You obviously told me that you prefer a single ponytail." As soon as these words came out, Kinyu Kazuma was stunned. Did he say this to her? It doesn't seem right. To be precise, he did say this. However, he remembered that it seemed that it was not in reality, but in a love simulation. In a certain simulation of Shianayuin, she asked about it. He thought about it for a while and finally remembered that incident. Chapter 82 Simulated Plot. At that time, Shianayuin asked, "What kind of hairstyle do you like?" He replied, "What hairstyle would look good with someone like you?" At that time, Shianakane was as naughty as she is now, confining him to the bedside, and shaking his hand in a coquettish tone that she seldom used in daily life. Choose one. What was his reply at that time? The answer he gave at that time was single ponytail. Speaking of which, he didn't want to know, but as soon as he thought about it, he was surprised to find that he couldn't remember what hairstyle Shianayuin wore at the beginning in reality. "I forget since when," Every time I see Xianyuan, she already has a single ponytail. But why does he have no memory of saying this in reality? A subtle suspicion arose in his heart, and he suddenly said, Heian, do you remember when I said I like single ponytails? Xianyuan was stunned for a moment, and then said helplessly, didn't I just change it after you said you liked it not long after we met? As she spoke, she began to pout and look unhappy again. Asaba Kazuma's absolute pitch sense failed to notice the panic in Xianyuan's voice. Did I guess wrong? Heian doesn't have the memory in the love simulation? Or does what happens in the love simulation change reality to a certain extent? That's why her memory is confused. But after thinking for a moment, Kinya Kazuma felt something was wrong again. If Heian really has the memories in the love simulation, and not just part of the memories, but all of them, then this means that Heian has enough knowledge about the road she has already walked. Even with abilities like absolute pitch, she can easily hide her emotions without adjusting her voice. Just like what he taught her in the dating simulation. If it were assumed that she already had that memory and then looked back, then some of the things that made him feel subtle and abnormal before could be explained. For example, why did she so quickly digest and absorb the knowledge that she was able to master 3 years later in the original love simulation? In the first few chapters, she directly noticed that Asaba Kazuma used genetic equations to make memory adjustment reagents for Rina. Another example was the single ponytail, something he remembered not taking the initiative to mention to her in real life. Street Diary. Long Lost Complaint Diary. Let me briefly talk about what happened when I got back from my eye exam yesterday. My left eye suffered from severe eye fatigue and pseudomyopia of 170 degrees. After I took the dilating eye drops, I couldn't even see clearly for 4-8 hours. I looked like a blind man. The doctor restricted me to use electronic products for no more than 20 minutes at a time. My pupils were dilated for 30 minutes in the middle. I thought it was too long to wait, so I might as well get a physical examination report for this year, and then I was dumbfounded when I got the customized physical examination form, because I could no longer see clearly at that time. The result was that the nurse lady ran around for a physical examination like a lost child. It was even more embarrassing when I was taking blood tests. The young lady patted my hand and said, "Clench your fist." I clench your fists. Nurse, tenosynovitis. It hurts so much when I clench my fists. I can't hold them tightly. Me, as embarrassed as if I had left the earth. I don't know why, but at that moment the young lady's tone became like coaxing a child. The terrible thing is that when I was sent to the DR room to prepare for filming, the DR room did not open for a long time. I was a little nervous and wondered if I had been taken to the wrong place. When a male doctor rolled the operating table and was waiting outside, he saw that I was very embarrassed and asked what was going on. I said that my pupils were dilated and I couldn't see clearly now. I didn't know if I was in the wrong position. The doctor picked up my list, took a look at it, and said, "Yes, this is it." The important point came. He patted the chair next to him. "Sit here, don't run around, wait for the doctor to call you." It smells like coaxing a child to stop running around. I never dreamed of dreaming back to my childhood. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 168. Wait, if we follow this clue and continue to deduce, wouldn't it be possible that there might be something abnormal on Rina's side? One thing to say is that Rina's painting ability has now surpassed the peak she could reach during the second simulation, and is approaching the level of the simulation she passed at an alarming speed. Previously, he had always explained the incredibly fast growth rate by saying because she had herself as a reference and a teacher to guide her. But, What if this is not growth, but simply digesting the past materials? Also, Sister Rena suddenly started to take care of her feet, which made him feel a lot more happy when playing. In reality, he even praised her once, saying, "Sister's feet are really great." But there is no reason why would Rena set her sights in this direction. It's as if she already knew her interests and hobbies before everything started. Thinking of this, Asahi Kazuma couldn't help but break out a little cold sweat on his back. Could it be that in this love simulation, it's not just you who participates in the simulation, but Rena and Yuine as well? Wait a minute, if you put it this way, wouldn't it be Maya? Send, send, send. Calm down, Asahi Kazuma, calm down quickly. Asahi Kazuma tried hard to calm down her emotions. How is this possible? Only I have experienced the stories that happened in the love simulation. How could Rena and Yuine know about it? But in a daze, he remembered what Amamiyamai had said to him before. Have you ever thought about a question? If one day, in the future you deduce, those people related to you all have memories of the future, how confident do you think you can be about the future situation? Somehow, that sentence became clearer and clearer in his mind. His eyes looked at Shiana Yuine after taking a bath. Shiana Kian was wearing a bathing suit. It might be the first time for the two of them to stay in a couple's hotel. Their expressions and movements were a bit awkward now. Asahi Kazuma scratched his head, and just as he was about to say, "How about we go up and take a rest first," Shiana Kane said. "Let's watch a movie first. There happened to be a movie I wanted to watch recently. I heard it won an award abroad." "Ah, good." Kinya Kazuma nodded in agreement, and the atmosphere suddenly became peaceful again. While you are watching the movie, you are talking to Shianouman about the current situation in the world, especially the turmoil in the field of adjusters that may be caused in the future after the emergence of adjusters. You showed deep concern in your words. Obviously, you are not optimistic about the future direction of the adjuster situation. Shianouman listened quietly without any rebuttal, but fell into deep thought from time to time while nodding in agreement. You are not lying. The future you know has actually been shown in other simulations, especially in the future without Shiana Yuine and you developing genetic adjustment reagents. The world has been because of the conflict between ordinary people and adjusters. The talent gap caused a turmoil that can be called KB's behavior. Utilization, abuse, experimentation with adjusters, even small-scale killings of adjusters have all occurred under the guidance of thoughtful people. When the relationship between ordinary people and adjusters was at its most severe, America once appeared as a candidate for leadership with the slogan relegating adjusters to inferiors / We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 169. You and Shiana Kane are playing and fooling around, living a life that even King Joe would envy, while Amamiyamai is currently sulking. Minamoto Shinjin didn't hide the fact that she came to see you at all. Amamiyamai soon learned about the incident from her own channels. You also understand the reason why Amamiyamai called you at this time, but you still chose to remain silent without hesitation, because she is not Rina Enduman, and you have no idea to explain immediately. Of course, this is also related to the subtle change in your mentality now. You tested Shiana Uman a little bit to see if she knew something about the love simulation, but maybe many of the things Shiana Uman said had some impression, or you could find similar memories to support it. There is no way for you to determine whether the memory of the love simulation will be directly linked to reality. But you were cautious after all. It was this caution that made you hesitate when facing Maya Amamaya. Although there are still some doubts, it is obvious that some things in the love simulation are not so easy to hide. It may be because of Amamiyamai's character problem, and the operation of the fall line is easier to get into her heart. Of course you know that this is only a small part of the reason. Amamiyamai is not the kind of person who will completely fall into bedside affairs. What really makes her regress step by step is actually her getting better and better now. Good-looking people, capable, and able to convert their abilities into tangible money and power. Excellent people are more likely to make others lose their ability to resist, especially after becoming allies with you and experiencing the benefits of being your friend. Sometimes some of the hatred in her heart will change, which is not incomprehensible. But the problem now is that you haven't figured out the underlying operating mechanism of the love simulation. You originally wanted to push her away step by step in this way, but now that the simulation is over, you have realized that you have chosen the direction. So you chose to alienate Amamiya Mai again, but this move only aroused her anger. The scene unfolds. In the cafe, Amamiya Mai's expression was not very good. Asaba Kazuma slowly drank tea and said, "So, what are you thinking about, worried about my cooperation with Minamoto Shinzen?" Amamiya Mai did not speak. She didn't know why, but after answering the phone last night, she felt a little uncomfortable. Especially when she saw Asaba Kazuma looking so leisurely now, she couldn't help but say in a slightly bitter tone, "I had a leisurely night last night, and I didn't expect that your partner is still frightened. If this happened before, I would definitely kick you out of the ranks of people who work with me." Perhaps sensing an indescribable sense of resentment in her words, she paused and immediately changed her words. "I'm not wronging you when I say you are a scumbag. I don't want to talk about what you have done. At least we are partners for the time being. We just treat each other as partners. Is that okay? But who am I now? She is your maid. When you remember her, you will use her regardless of your objections. If you don't remember her, just pretend you don't know her, right?" When Amamiya Mai said these words, Asahi Kazuma paused. In fact, Amamiya Mai was right to a certain extent, or more exaggerated. Most of the time, his attitude towards her was even worse than that of his partners. In other words, he himself is also consciously avoiding the idea of a further relationship with Amamiya Mai, even if it is just that he prefers the role of a partner. After all, he really felt that he did not have such complicated thoughts to face one heroine after another in a love simulation. But now it seems that the behavior I consciously avoided is indeed a bit excessive. He took a deep breath and said, "Sorry, this is my problem." "What do you want to do?" Amamiya Mai subconsciously clasped her hands together to protect herself. Seeing Amamiya Mai's wary gaze, Asahi Kazuma was stunned for a moment and said helplessly, "Don't be so nervous, it's not because of that kind of thing." Amamiya Mai frowned subconsciously, and the expression on her face became more subtle. When the two met before, it seemed like they had a grudge against each other. Well, it wasn't like they had a grudge, at least that's what she thought unilaterally. The smell of gunpowder is very strong. She was convinced that Kinya Kazuma was a man who was determined to retaliate against others, and the two of them had been at odds with each other not once or twice. But this time, this man actually chose to give in when facing her, and she couldn't help but wonder. "You suddenly changed your attitude, which quite surprised me." After a while, Amamiya Mai finally sighed after confirming that Asaba Kazuma had no extra meaning. Asaba Kazuma told the truth. "Strictly speaking, I suddenly realized that it is really meaningless to do this. There is not much hatred between you and me. What happened between Rina and Hien? After all, I didn't expect this result at the time, so I am very restrained now and restrain myself not to attract bees and butterflies. Just like you, if a girl like you pursues me seriously, I think it is still difficult for me to control the bottom line. In order to avoid such a situation, I chose to cut off the relationship with you directly without giving you a chance. But now it seems that my initial idea was too simple and made you have some bad feelings. Terribly sorry. Can you please speak normally? It's a bit disgusting to speak like this." Amamiya Mai made a motion of retching. Perhaps because Asaba Kazuma has caused quite a stir in the scientific community recently, Amamiya Mai chose to meet Asaba Kazuma alone this time, and was not rejected by the group of bodyguards. "Then what should I say?" "Amamiya-san tastes really good," Asaba Kazuma rolled her eyes and lowered her voice. What left him speechless was that after he showed this expression, the discomfort on Amamiyamai's face dissipated a lot. Just say it normally. Those bodyguards of yours, to put it mildly, are to protect your personal safety, but to put it worst, are they really not sent by your family to monitor you? Kinya Kazuma shook his head. Amamiyamai needed to meet him alone, but she actually needed to discuss it with the bodyguard first. What kind of treatment is this? Those who didn't know better thought those guys in suits were the bodyguards. There is nothing we can do about it. The incident you caused before had a very bad impact within the Genji family. Strictly speaking, these bodyguards do not take orders from me, but from the old patriarch. Maybe our precious experimental products still have a lot of value to the old man, and no damage is allowed. You Genji, to be honest, I don't quite understand. In the early years, you Genji were not in the medical device-related industry at all, but starting from the previous generation of old family masters, the overall development direction has been completely towards a field that is unfamiliar to you. Now, Genji Medical has even become a very important economic pillar for you. Such a rapid change is really not in line with the characteristics of Japan's local capital. Although Asaba Kazuma did not directly explain the problem, he almost expressed his intention of suspecting that there is something wrong within Genji on his face. Amamiyamai didn't speak either. When it comes to protecting people like them who have successfully completed the experiment, it seems that even my cheap dad doesn't have much say. She was silent for a moment, remembering the purpose of coming to Kinya Kazuma today. I'm not here to make trouble with you today, I've long passed the age of making trouble. You have been mentally prepared recently. It may be because you and I are too close, and you refuse to cooperate with Jensensen. She is planning to take action against your related industries. Asaba Kazuma nodded, and suddenly said, so you actually knew for a long time that it was impossible for me to cooperate with Jensensen, right? Then when you came here just now, you looked like you were going to attack me. Amamiyamai's expression froze for a moment, but she quickly reacted the next second and said viciously. Why, you did it, but you still don't allow me to call an army to punish you. Okay, if you ask the question, ask the question. Bah, disgusting, can you speak normally? Come on, that's how my partner and I talk. Then what was your attitude when you talked to me before? You didn't regard me as a partner at that time, right? You are so messy. What do you mean I'm so messy? Someone was eager for me to bother you before, but after I'm done with it, I'll just pretend it's nothing, right? These words made Qian Yufengjian feel a little guilty for a moment, so that he who originally wanted to argue fell silent. Seeing this, Amamiyamai became even more enthusiastic. She kept chattering for a long time, and she didn't stop until she was satisfied. Just one word, cool. Your subconscious avoidance and concession put Amamiyamai in a good mood today, and she was humming until she left the cafe. That night, she asked you to come out and act as a tool again. You noticed that Amamiyamai was trying to hit the snake with a stick, and launched a fierce attack without mercy for a while. The proud Mai was defeated again. You spent a satisfying night and began to think about whether you should do something risky with her next time. But you soon no longer have so much thought about Amamiyamai. As she said, Jensensen has begun to use his own resources to interfere with your industry to a certain extent. At this time, the first episode of The Child I Pushed is about to be broadcast. The animation studio found that a group of people began to appear on anonymous bulletin boards, Little Bluebird and other software, targeting some of the relevant information you disclosed in the early stage to stigmatize. Especially since you once jokingly said that this is a happy comedy between an underage idol who gave birth to a child before marriage and her twin brother and sister. A group of people who didn't know where they came from began to attack wildly, mainly focusing on the identity of the female idol and single mother Ai Hoshino in The Child I Pushed, and began to bombard them indiscriminately. Unfortunately, they don't know that all this is part of your plan, just like what Hoshino loves to say in the anime, this whole set of publicity plans you made for children I pushed, it's all lies. You released the promotional MV for The Child I Pushed, which was accompanied by the theme song Idol. It was a promotional MV that was comparable to animation content. This kind of effort is something that almost no one in the industry has done. This flattering behavior caused a small sensation among anime fans. The electronic music is a little manic, but also has an indescribable soft sound. It is very consistent with the content of the MV, but it is also vaguely sad at this time. A large number of onlookers were attracted by Hisa's remarks and were ready to curse after watching the MV. I suddenly had some expectations for the content. However, more people started to curse, and many people even threatened that after the first episode was broadcast, they would curse directly after watching it. Until the broadcast of the first episode of The Child I Pushed, which lasted more than an hour. Overnight, the attention of Children I Pushed exploded. Fans who were hurt by the exquisiteness of the first episode of Children I Pushed, the delicate content, and the bloody sword looked back at the previous promotions during the MV. I suddenly discovered that the tragic ending of Hoshino Ai, who is the mother of the male and female protagonist's brother and sister, had already been reflected in the MV. However, few viewers at that time were aware of the malice hidden in it. At the same time, you posted a paragraph on your Little Bluebird account, secretly telling everyone, supervision is also the embodiment of lies, /. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 171. Whoever I love, Asahi Kazuma is just playing normally now. If anyone asks why, then let him help him block the hatchets from his two little girlfriends, as well as the very possible killer of Mai Amamiya. Now Amamiya Mai still has at least some signs of Stockholm Syndrome, and she suddenly feels better towards her, and her attitude has obviously improved a lot, and she finally doesn't even resist as violently as before, or looks like a corpse. This gave him a glimmer of hope. A glimmer of hope to survive the hatchet. But, don't mention it. After a little cooperation, Amamiya Mai's experience for him skyrocketed. If excluding the mental enjoyment, the positive physical feedback she brought to him was not as good as that of Xiao Zhou, then now he is afraid that he will temporarily withdraw this evaluation. Perhaps it was a reward for Asahi Kazuma not treating her so violently this time. When the girl's snow-white and clean hands were wrapped around his neck, Asahi Kazuma really felt like they were close friends on the bed. A feeling of degenerate, really getting more and more depraved. Qian Yufengjian was heartbroken and felt that he was really bewitched. Fortunately, when he made a slightly excessive request, Amamiya Mai, who had a softer face, suddenly changed her face and almost kicked him off. Asahi Kazuma suddenly woke up. Suddenly a desire to communicate with her arose, but fortunately he had strong self-control and suppressed it. Bushi. Perhaps it was to retaliate against Asahi Kazuma's dirty request, and then she no longer cooperated with him. Instead, she took action directly on her own. Not to mention, she had an arrogant expression like a queen on her face, and it gave Asahi Kazuma a new experience. It's a pity that Amamiya Mai has a tough mouth but a soft body, so she's a perfect little girl. After gritting his teeth and persisting for a while, he soon fell on Kinha Kazuma, as if his bones had been taken out, and he didn't want to move anymore. Asahi Kazuma also felt that it was quite outrageous. Logically speaking, after all these years, Amamiya Mai's physical fitness is far superior to that of ordinary people, otherwise she wouldn't have had the slightest chance to suppress Asahi Kazuma with the blessing of overclocking mode. But actually when she was on the bed, she was really weak. She was so weak that even if she tried to fight back, she soon lost the ability to continue her efforts. Asahi Kazuma stretched out her hand to support Amamiya Mai's slender waist, and said coldly, "My belly is so soft. It's not good. I suddenly have the urge to get pregnant with this soft belly." Amamiyamai paused for a moment, then her feet hooked behind Asaba Kazuma hit him on the back with some dissatisfaction. You can't even pretend to be my fiancé, you want to eat shit. Huh? There's no conflict between me wanting you to have a big belly and me not wanting to be your fiancé, right? Asayu Kazuma subconsciously got excited. Then he quickly turned around, and it was best not to treat Amamiyamai the same way as before, to avoid the 1 in 10,000 possibility, he would be the only one to suffer the worst. So he quickly made a somewhat reluctant excuse, our current relationship is no deeper than the fiancé relationship that has no meaning except in name. As he spoke, he gently smoothed down Amamiyamai's movements that started to resist with his warm hands. He looked at her belly button, and for some reason, subconsciously poked it in with his thumb. It was obviously just an ordinary action, but now it carried an unusual aura. This excuse is really lame. Also, don't pull my belly button. If it hurts for a while. Amamiyamai's voice also became intermittent. This feeling made her a little uneasy. It has to be said that Asaba Kazuma is a person who can easily master anything, and he easily grasped Amamiyamai's pain points. Her body leaned back, becoming less and less resistant. Kinya Kazuma's eyes lit up when he saw this, and he said in a low voice, "You are not so angry today, and you feel quite different." Amamiyamai did not reply, but snorted from her nasal cavity. Her appearance was a little less arrogant and a little more girlish than usual. It was very rare that Jian Yufengjian's breathing also changed. His big warm hand gently passed across Amamiyamai's skin, and suddenly said in a low voice, "It actually looks a lot cuter at times like this, so, is it really not possible?" Amamiyamai was silent for a moment. After a while, she worked hard to adjust her body and said nothing more. Everything was said in silence. You also know that Amamiyamai is the kind of tough-talking person who will not give you the answer directly, but will let you understand the secret by yourself. You took the initiative to try. Although Amamiyamai did not speak directly, her face turned rosy after all. After the clouds cleared, Amamiyamai suddenly raised her hand and said in an extremely cold tone, "Are you an undercover agent, /?" You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 173. Some people in the industry shouted, "The wolf is coming." But you soon realized something was wrong. As the saying goes, every industry, even if publicity is maximized, still needs substantial results to support the good reputation of the product. The possibility of flattery in the void is likely to be flattering and to kill you, hoping that you will die. Those who brag about the quality of a product that has not yet been released are often your opponents. You know this very well as you have worked in a leading condiment company in your past life. Real business wars are always so simple and unpretentious, such as slandering a processing factory that, except for the initial input stage, almost the entire process is transported through pipeline isolation, saying that some employees pooped and peed in the food and condiments. For example, deliberately bribed the marketing director of a competitor, quietly channeled goods, disrupting the company's local market layout. For example, when introducing it to consumers directly, does it mean that sun exposure for XX days means that the lighting conditions are different for each batch, and the product quality is uncontrollable? These are examples you have seen with your own eyes. For large companies, the easiest way is to use absolute marketing expenses, large volume distribution, and even stable quality to tell their opponents how vulnerable they are. But small companies cannot afford this risk, because small companies have absolutely no ability to do this under normal circumstances. Unless, someone is cheating from the beginning. With no life crisis, you no longer have the idea of focusing all your energy on biomedicine. You begin to confidently learn relevant knowledge about your future industrial layout, and use your talents to rapidly advance in this area. In this battle, you can be sure that you will be able to give everyone a big slap in the face. At the same time, you confirmed the animation studio's new project. The scene unfolds. At the animation studio company meeting, Asaba Kazuma sat in the middle position, and Ishihara Rina timidly sat in the seat closest to Asaba Kazuma. "Don't be nervous, everyone in the meeting is our own people," Chienu Kazuma whispered. Rina is now a little less panicked than when she first came to the company. Her words and deeds make people feel more shy, rather than her previous fear of contact with outsiders. This made Asahi Kazuma feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Although in this way, Rina is not a treasure that only belongs to herself, but a treasure that belongs to the company and more fans who love the animation industry. Sometimes Asaba Kazuma is a little disappointed, but seeing her really he will still be happy to be able to embrace the world. As for the new project, is it really confirmed like this? Ishihara Rina was a little uneasy. Animation Studio is currently in a period of rapid development. Every time a card is played, it gives people a feeling of trying their best, with a deep sense of gambling. Asahi Kazuma was not that scared. The relevant experience in his previous life gave him the courage to compete with everyone, and the results obtained from each love simulation also gave Asaba Kazuma the ability to realize everything. Soon, Daisuke Hiramaki came in with a piece of information. "Kazuma, you brought the things over and distributed them directly." "Send it," Kinyu Kazuma said. Sitting in this conference room now are the core members of the animation studio. He has served as the general supervisor, painting supervisor, and music supervisor for various past works, and is a group of core members who play a decisive role in the animation production project team. Asaba Kazuma patted the documents on the table and said calmly, "From last year to this year, our animation studio had a perfect start. This may be the busiest time since the animation studio was established. The eyes of peers in the industry all focused on us. But it's not enough, far from it. I won't say anything redundant. In recent times, our company has more than doubled in size. From the most basic original painters to the core members of the project team, the number of people has doubled. The purpose just to prepare for several projects today." Asahi Kazuma patted the documents on the table and said with a smile, "In the next 3 quarters, our animation studio will release a total of 12 works, which means there will be as few as 3 and as many as 5 parallel project teams within the company during the same period. This is undoubtedly a big project, and Pingmu will supervise it." Daisuke Hiramaki stood up and said, "Yes. This quarter, the company's plan for an angel came to me has been sent to you before. It is the most common small and beautiful light lily style work in our animation studio. As the general supervisor, you are watching it here. Just do it. I will let the animation supervisor take on more responsibilities, which can be regarded as training new people who can take over the position of general supervisor. When it comes to releasing works, I don't have to worry about not having a good plan. The focus of your responsibility is the project to be released in the middle of the year, Lelich of the Rebellion. This series, you need to be more careful, it is not easy to handle." Daisuke Hiramaki nodded, his expression extremely serious. Only Asaba Kazuma himself knows that what is really difficult to deal with in this series is the generation gap. It is true that Lelich of the Rebellion is already an old work, and even in the eyes of many people who followed it back then, this animation can be said to be a god among gods. But after all, time is not forgiving. After so many years, the audience's aesthetic vision has changed again and again. Although the worldview of Lelich of the Rebellion will not completely fall behind, after all, it is not what it used to be. The core of the story is good, but how to use the core of the story to give a more perfect answer with a background that is more suitable for the audience's preferences is another matter. Apart from anything else, the operation methods of the mechas in Lelich alone really give people the feeling of 20 years ago. If you look back and look at it, you will find that some of the operation methods are very similar to what you would see in a video game. The feeling of riding a motorcycle in the city. This kind of content, which is so easy to dramatize nowadays, must be slightly adjusted. Why make cyberpunk Edgewalker? To a large extent, it is to accumulate experience in this area and try to make the works look more fashionable. Asabi Kazuma has high expectations for this work. Some people may think that this animation is second-rate. There may be old viewers who go back and watch it. They feel that the content of the story is relatively thin. Although the proportions of the characters are beautiful, but watch more after a few glances, you will feel that it is not so harmonious. But it is undeniable that none of the works that could become hegemonic at that time were simply the darlings of the times. Even if a certain company's disc sales are quite good, that is because its content is very suitable for promotion on the internet. It is not so easy to attract a group of people to watch a series with just a few thin clips. Not to mention, in an era when the internet was not that developed, Lelouch of the Rebellion became popular more through word of mouth. Asabi Kazuma still remembers that before Lelouch of the Rebellion appeared, there were few animations that students could talk about together. In that era when watching animation is equal to childishness, it was really possible for the still young second-generation veterans to watch an animation and be laughed at by some people. In the past, there were not many works that could break through this invisible circle. The reason why Sea of Death has become one of the three major migrant comics is due to its industry-breaking influence. Among the short works, Lelouch of the Rebellion can definitely be regarded as one of the few that was able to rapidly expand the two-dimensional circle in Daxia back then. One of the keynote works. Such a work is left to Daisuke Hiramaki to handle, and one can imagine Asabi Kazuma's loyalty to him. Asabi Kazuma coughed lightly, and then said, "Then let me introduce to you the project leader of another new project we are going to do this time. She is considered a newbie in terms of general supervision. We also need everyone to support us here. Please take good care of the newcomers." Asabi Kazuma looked at Ishihara Rina. Ishihara Rina's expression was a little stiff, but after a moment she didn't know what she thought of. The stiffness on her face gradually dissipated. She stood up and said softly, "Please take care of the future planning of K-On. After finishing speaking, there was a small burst of surprised sounds from below. Some people had hesitant expressions on their faces, some were thoughtful, and there were people like Daisuke Hiramaki who looked like everything was expected. K-On, a classic masterpiece of cuteness, lily, and music, has never appeared in Japan in this world. After much thought, Chien Kazuma finally decided on this drama. K-On, or another more famous name, King Ian Girls, I don't know how big a sensation it caused in the industry at that time, and to some extent, it can be regarded as one of the sources of the explosive growth of the cute style. 1. To tell a joke, until Asabi Kazuma's time travel, there were friends who came to rewatch the show. After watching King Ian Shoujo, they happily changed their emoticons to a large number of character emoticons. Of course, this is not the most important thing. More importantly, the style of light music girl is actually easier for experienced employees to control. The story is narrated with music, which really gives people a different look. However, seeing that some people at the scene had doubts, he still knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, "This work K-On is my preparation for creating an evergreen project for the animation studio. In the future, Rina Ishihara will be the main person in charge of this project. The purpose is to help us create a group of music comics that can leave a deep enough impression on the audience. Because I attach great importance to it, I will also dedicate some energy to pay attention to it, but don't slack off just because Rina is the general supervisor." Asahi Kazuma's expression was serious. The people present were also working professionals. How could they not understand that their boss had already made up his mind to let Rina Ishihara serve as the general supervisor? And this is a project that the boss will devote his energy to personally paying attention to. Many people already have some kind of judgment in their minds. It is false to pay personal attention to him, but it is true to train the newcomer Rina Ishihara. Judging from the boss's attitude, the emphasis on this project is absolutely ridiculous, and may even exceed the attention paid to Daisuke Hiramaki to some extent. In other words, this animation will probably be more filled with the colors of Asaba Kazuma himself. This actually reassured them a lot. Although many people within the company now know that Ishihara Rina is very good at original paintings and has a full sense of camera, but without actual attempts, who can say that it will definitely be possible? Let's take the simplest example. A new general supervisor who made Chainsaw Man was mediocre. Although he was a new person in the industry of general supervisor, he left the position of general supervisor and moved to the position of original animator. In the field, he originally belonged to the big guys. But what's the use? Didn't you just take a big production and end up on the street? Asaba Kazuma can understand their concerns, but will not change his decision. Because only he can understand that Rina's modeling talent, which brings her the ability to grasp the end, is really not a talent that normal people can achieve. Asaba Kazuma himself also has this ability. He knows very well that after possessing this ability, the bonuses provided to his understanding of storyboards and control of distance are really terrifying. Whether it is pure 2D animation, or 3D animation, or character design of 3D masterpieces, they can all produce considerable bonuses. The most exaggerated thing is that after Asaba Kazuma accidentally experienced a flight simulator, he suddenly discovered that this ability may have a bonus to distance perception in space. In terms of Gundam UC's worldview, it seems to have a bit of spatial perception bonus. It can only be said that she is worthy of being one of the designated heroines of love simulations. There is quite a lot of potential for development of this talent. And Ishihara Rina also looked at Asaba Kazuma gratefully. She would never think that Asaba Kazuma was taking credit from her. Kazuma was a foreign aid requested by the animation studio at that time, so everyone would be more tolerant of him at that time. But now animation studio has passed the crisis period, and it can even be said that it has flourished during this period. There are countless people in the company who want to start an independent project, and there are many people who are more qualified than themselves. However, I won't let go so easily. Ishihara Rina really likes the story of K-On!, but more importantly, she hopes that she can help him instead of becoming a burden to him. For this purpose, she must use all means, even through Kazuma's methods of encouraging others, to make herself stronger. Quietly, Ishihara Rina's mentality underwent some subtle changes. Come on, Rina, prove to everyone that Kazuma is not mistaken. Just as he was thinking this, Asaba Kazuma's cell phone placed on the table suddenly vibrated. Kinya Kazuma frowned, picked up the phone and glanced at it. Huh. Qian Yufengmo let out a surprised cry. Everyone looked at him. Qian Yufengjian thought for a moment and finally said. Someone, please pull up a stool. Our investor who has never met us wants to come over and hear about the company's next plans. Everyone was stunned for a moment. If Asaba Kazuma hadn't mentioned this matter, they would have almost forgotten that there were investors in the animation studio. Suddenly, Asaba Kazuma added, put the stool next to Rina. If she has any questions later, don't say more. I will talk to her. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 174. Put the stool next to Rina. If she has any questions later, don't say anything. I'll just come and talk to her. Kinya Kazuma snorted softly. What is Amamiyamai doing, and why did she suddenly come to his company? Qian Yufengjian was a little confused for a moment. However, he still got up and went out, and went downstairs to pick her up. As soon as he arrived downstairs, he saw Amamiya with her hair disheveled and wearing a black gauze skirt. The lights on the roadside flickered on and off. She was sitting in the back seat of the luxury car with her eyes closed in deep thought. The female bodyguard stood beside her. Looked at Asahi Kazuma walking over with a little vigilance. Asahi Kazuma didn't say anything, but silently passed the female bodyguard and came to Amamiyamai. Amamiyamai was taking a nap, her eyes were a little less sharp than usual and a little more mysterious. She sat there quietly, like the goddess of the night in her sleep. He silently lifted the ends of her hair. Amamiyamai opened her eyes as if she was frightened. There was a bit of ferocity in her eyes, but after seeing Asahi Kazuma, her eyes were wide open and calm. "Come down. You can just call me," she said calmly. Asahi Kazuma smiled and said, "It's nothing. I saw that you look very tired. You are so tired that you still come to my company. It will be better if I slowly tell you the situation later." Amamiyamai frowned subconsciously. Asahi Kazuma's attitude today was not quite right, but her peripheral vision glanced at the bodyguard who was quietly looking at her through the rearview mirror, and her voice became a little more enthusiastic. "Even if the family's money is directly invested in your company because of the cooperation regulations, we must at least know where the money is used, or, you don't welcome me. This little girl is quite smart. She understood what I meant right away." Asahi Kazuma thought to herself, chatting with smart people is a pleasure. Since Amamiyamai is so cooperative, then he should be a little more cooperative. Asahi Kazuma smiled and said, "I don't care. After all, I will always be on the right path. As my investor, you will only become more and more confident. But I think you are really tired now." Amamiyamai shook her head and said, "I have long been used to it. After taking a nap in the car, I will be refreshed. Let's go. Don't keep the people in your conference room waiting." "Okay." Asahi Kazuma stretched out his hand in a very gentlemanly manner, and Amamiyamai also stretched out her hand, put it on top, and slowly got out of the car. "Look up, look ahead, don't look back, take me up," Amamiyamai whispered. Asahi Kazuma smiled. He had a strong body and didn't like bending down, so he naturally led Amamiyamai into the stairs with his head held high. It wasn't until he was in a corner where the bodyguards couldn't see that his warm expression softened slightly and his cold expression returned. "You Genji are really, a bit hard to describe." Amamiyamai sighed. What Asahi Kazuma said was true. "Thank you, it's been a big help." Her voice was much softer. "Genji's supervision has been a little stricter recently." Asahi Kazuma was a little surprised and said, "No, I'm doing quite well here." Amamiyamai shook her head and said, "It's not your problem. The qualities you have shown have actually been well received within Genji, including Minamoto Shinzen," Asahi Kazuma said with a smile. Amamiyamai remained silent, obviously acquiescing to this answer. Asahi Kazuma smiled happily and said, "This person is quite discerning. Although we are hostile, as an opponent, she at least knows how difficult it is for me to deal with." Amamiyamai rubbed her eyebrows and said, "Can you please stop mentioning her? I have been used as a gun for you during this period. You did not directly face her threat, but it doesn't matter." Kinyu Fengjian was a little depressed and whispered, "She is targeting you recently? Your sister is a little more arrogant than I thought." "What are you arrogant about?" Amamiyamai didn't know why. Qian Yufengma snorted and said in a slightly weird tone, "To deal with me, if you don't try your best to play your trump card, the result will be doomed. After provoking me, she actually put her main target on you. She really underestimated the enemy." "It's not like you underestimate the enemy." Amamiyamai frowned and said, "I can probably guess what she is thinking. She probably thinks that compared to you, I am the real reason why you have no scruples, so she defeated me first. I'm afraid you'll be defeated if you don't attack." After a pause, she added, "I still underestimated the enemy a little. I thought you would be her number one target, but I didn't expect that she had just finished provoking you. After I gave you support, She turned around and pointed the spear at you. Got me right. There are already some suspicions within Genji that I am borrowing family resources to help outsiders and quietly transfer Genji's assets. After all, I really don't ask for much in return for the support I give you. The results are very significant, but without much return, it is easy to catch people's tongue, although I actually think so. Asahi Kazuma nodded. When he passed by just now, he showed that he was very familiar with Amamiyamai, in order to hide it from the bodyguards who were protecting Amamiyamai. In other words, it was hidden from the eyes of Genji's internal surveillance team, Mai Amamiya. He could clearly feel that when he went to find Amamiyamai, the bodyguards were much more wary of him, but more eyes were still on Amamiyamai. When he met this group of people before, their eyes were mainly focused on everyone who was close to Amamiyamai, and they had a stronger sense of protection. But unlike now, they almost showed that they were spying on Amamiyamai. He instinctively felt that Amamiyamai was in trouble. In other words, when he first punished Amamiyamai, he might have completely ignored such a scene. But after all, Amamiyamai also played with him for a long time. Asahi Kazuma felt that it was natural for him to bully Amamiyamai. After all, she had caused a lot of trouble for herself. But he just felt that others were bullying her, which made him a little unhappy. Well, even just spying on her. So he directly took the most extreme approach, which was to completely ignore this group of people. You Genji's dog, you are here to demonstrate to me. How gentle he was to Amamiyamai, but how indifferent he was to the group of bodyguards. It was as if he was telling them with actions that what he cared about was not Genji, but Amamiyamai, his partner in Genji. Well, that's right, if a partner is in trouble, he should help with writing to some extent. Chien Kazuma said in a low voice, you descendants of the consortium are really not taken seriously in the eyes of the people who are in charge of the entire consortium behind the scenes. Amamiyamai snorted and said, it's not that they are not taken seriously, but that I am not taken seriously enough. I originally thought that Minamoto Shinzuru would turn his attention to you, and I could feel more relaxed. Unexpectedly, she turned the gun around and hit me directly. It seemed that she was stimulated by you. Her recent attacks on me have been quite fierce. On the other hand, the firepower on your side is just like that. Basically, the forces on her mother's side are attacking you, but don't those people know you better like me and her? No matter how hard they fight, they can't do anything. Grab your sore spot. Still engaging in traditional business wars, I'm afraid this will not only not threaten you, but will also make your career more prosperous. Qian Yufengjian clicked his tongue. No wonder he had felt something was wrong before. It was clear that Minamoto Shinzuru was talking nonsense in front of him, but the intensity of the attack he received was not as high as expected. This style of play was really a bit old. Although the old routine is often more effective, for a loser like him, it is really just drizzle. Fortunately, he had been nervous for such a period of time. You do look very tired, the fatigue is visible to the naked eye, Asahi Kazuma whispered, and then after a moment of pause, he said a rare sentence, it must be very hard. Are you concerned about me? Amamiyamai's nose twitched, and when she was about to say something, Asahi Kazuma said, the conference room has arrived. He opened the door and walked in one step ahead of Mai Amamiya. Seeing his small gesture of asserting dominance, Amamiyamai sighed inwardly. Sure enough, the feeling just now was all an illusion. Asahi Kazuma walked to Ishihara Rina, pulled out a chair, and said to Amamiyamai, who was walking over, Miss Mai, sit here. Rina Ishihara looked at the girl in surprise. She had seen this good-looking girl before, and on the afternoon after the Kazuma Culture Festival, she pointed out the direction for herself. However, Ishihara Rina couldn't help but think of the scene where Asahi Kazuma and Shianakane danced and embraced on the top of the tower that day. Although she feels much calmer now, She still can't help but pout when she thinks of that incident. Kazima, you big radish. However, she had no ill feelings toward Amamiyamai, a girl who was younger than her. She even showed a kind smile after Amamiyamai sat down next to her. Amamiyamai felt a little uneasy for a while. She has always been a cautious person, but precisely because of this, when she meets others for the first time, she prefers to look at them quietly. When she met Ishihara for the first time, she felt that this girl was the kind of person with a soft personality, a good heart, and someone who was willing to show kindness to others. Just like in her memory, she admired Tomoko Amamiya. Her eyes and friendly smile are hard to deceive. She is a good girl, but it was precisely because of this that she felt such strong dissatisfaction with Asaba Kazuma. She is obviously good to you, and you have not rejected her. Why can you enjoy all the preferential treatment she gives you like a scumbag as a matter of course? At that moment, she seemed to see the back of Minamoto Zayashi, who was now in charge of Genji, behind Asaba Kazuma. I really couldn't control it for a while, and finally. In the end, I didn't expect to end up like this. I don't know if this girl knows what happened between Asaba Kazuma and herself. She couldn't sit still for a while, and couldn't help but think of what she had experienced in various places during this time and method. Asaba Kazuma didn't notice the change in Amamiyamai's expression. After returning to the main seat and sitting down, he looked at Amamiyamai and said, "In a while, new research results from the laboratory and products that can be commercialized will be released. By then, your situation will be much better." Amamiyamai didn't understand why he wanted to talk about this in front of so many people, and just nodded. Then Asaba Kazuma turned to others. "This is Miss Amamiyamai, one of our Genji supporters some time ago. Although she is not involved in the animation studio and our subsequent related projects, she is still our firm supporter investors. When I have time, I will take her to get to know you all." After he finished speaking, he looked at Ishihara again and whispered, "Rina, you have met Mai before." Rina Ishihara nodded blankly. She is a good person. Obviously this good guy means it literally, not a good guy card, but stating the facts. Amamiyamai could hear it, and for a moment she felt even more uncomfortable on the stool. This man is really a dog. He has a bad personality. Is he telling me that Rina Ishihara has a good personality and there was no need for me to interfere at that time? If Asaba Kazuma knew what Amamiyamai was thinking now, he would definitely tell her that she was simply overthinking it. He really just wanted the two of them to get to know each other. Anyway, she and she are also partners now. The two had so much conflict before. Now that their relationship has eased a lot, there is no need to continue tit for tat. Perhaps because of Ishihara gentle personality, Amamiyamai could not sit still for a moment in the conference room that day. It was clear that what she hated most in the past was scumbags like Asaba Kazuma, but now she has become herself the most annoying person in my memory. Especially when she thought about the times you and she had been in various rooms before, you sang and I went on stage, a sense of guilt that rarely appeared in her mood quietly emerged. After that, in the conference room, she, who had always been attentive, became a little distracted from time to time, and even looked at Rina Ishihara and you. The scene fell into the eyes of others, and it was a little subtle for a while. Your subordinates all know that as the boss, you are quite attractive to girls even within the company. There are many female employees who are aware of their long marks and are secretly showing affection for you. It's just that usually this kind of thing will be ignored by you. In addition, Ishihara has always been by your side even if you don't say it. Many people in the company will have guesses. But now they feel a little confused. After all, the investor who came here today is also a beautiful girl whose appearance and figure are not inferior to Rina Ishihara. Before this unknown investor came to the company once believed that the investor who had previously invested in the animation studio double opening project was a fool who came from nowhere and was signed a black slave contract by his own boss. But now, they suddenly feel that the fool may not be the investors, but themselves. Look at this young investor sitting dignifiedly in the conference room and looking at her boss. She is really speechless. I am afraid she is not using her family's money to support the man she likes. For a moment, the men in the company became more convinced of you two beautiful girls who have a crush on their boss sat together in front of each other. The scene was actually so harmonious. My boss really has something. You didn't care about this, and continued to have detailed discussions with the heads of several project teams on how to develop the animation studio's plans this year. Amamiyamai also gradually entered the state, focusing more on Asaba Kazuma's plan, sometimes frowning and sometimes calming down. After the meeting, you said hello to Ishihara and then sent Amamiyamai downstairs. While walking on the stairs, you suddenly said, "We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love?" Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 175. While walking on the stairs, you suddenly said, "Animation studio is just a company, not my company. At least I'm not sure anyone will tell anyone about your words and deeds in my company for money. So I kept an insurance policy and told you about this directly at the meeting, which is considered as taking a stand in advance. I have already received the news from those top journals. Can you take this opportunity to discuss it with Genji? It's up to you to take back the right to speak." Amamiya stopped, her expression was complicated, and she seemed a little overwhelmed. The scene unfolds. When I used the resources under my control to make the initial investment for you, I never thought that I could get benefits from this. Amamiya my side, although I said that I can rely on you to support me when the time comes, but more of it was used as a ransom. Qian Yufengjian smiled and said, "There is no need to test me like this. Since I said I will help you to the end. To put it bluntly, for me, I don't need to worry too much about doing this, it is just a convenient matter." You are really arrogant enough. Amamiya my side. She probably understood what Asaba Kazuma meant, and it was nothing more than the same rhetoric of "I'm always on the right path and helping my partners by the way." This person always said that she was tough-tongued, but I never saw him being that soft-spoken. Huh? Actually speaking, it's quite soft. A wonderful thought flashed through Amamiya Mai's mind. At least when he scratched her skin, it was indeed quite soft. But she soon spat inwardly. Dirty. Why do you think of those things? What skills does this person have that make me interested? Isn't he just good-looking, talented, and physically strong? Amamiya Mai felt guilty and suppressed her thoughts, looking at Asaba Kazuma. What do you want to do again? Kinya Kazuma didn't know what he was thinking. He stood at the entrance of the corridor thoughtfully, and finally raised his head and said, "My gene editing technology has improved to a higher level. With the emphasis Genji has placed on related technologies over the years, I'm afraid you may soon want to turn around and cooperate with me. In addition, I asked someone to investigate, and it turns out that your Genji side is very interesting. There is something wrong with the way your old family leader, Genzai's father, made his fortune. I'm afraid there are some unexplainable secrets behind the Shenzi project that you and Genzanzan participated in." Asaba Kazuma took out his mobile phone, moved his fingers, and sent some of the information he investigated to Amamiya Mai's mobile phone. You can read it after you go back. Remember to hide it a little bit. I don't think that old guy Genji would like others to explore his secrets in private. Amamiya Mai nodded, turned around and left. Felix, your brand, officially started selling the first scenery and the first scale figure in the same month. Shiina Uman graduated from Hakuin High School. After the graduation ceremony, you went to her house and met Shiina Kane's parents. This time, with the cooperation of you and Shiina Yuan, it didn't take long for the Shiina couple to reluctantly agree to Shiina Yuan's choice. This is the first time that their daughter has put forward her needs so seriously. They don't want to may not be allowed. Shiina Yuin has been admitted to the University of Tokyo in advance. It makes no difference to her whether she takes the college entrance examination or not. Like her, Asaba Kazuma is also admitted, but Asaba Kazuma does not want to major in medicine or biology and plans to take the exam on her own. You invited a group of anchors from the animation and figurine areas of major platforms, asked them to help bring goods, and sent them customized figurines engraved with their names. The anchors in the animation and figurine areas were very happy. I like your little reward. I put more effort than usual when bringing the goods. It didn't take long before the number of people pre-ordering the figures surged. The pre-sale of the 2 figures produced by Felix under you went crazy, and the originally scheduled production batches were cleared directly. Because this is your first model, you have put forward higher requirements for the construction period and quality. Usually, it takes more than half a year for a figure factory to complete the publicity pre-sale production shipment process. The purpose of the whole process is to ensure that you make a steady profit without losing any money. But you don't have this interest, because you know very well that the value of Felix's figures is not to create huge profits, but to enhance the brand value of Animation Studio and even Faishi Entertainment's IP in the future. Making money is just incidental, and you know very well that for those who like figures, sincerity is the greatest nirvana. With your direct control, every figure produced by Felix will be of high-quality product marketing. A month later, Shiina Uman accompanied you to buy a second-hand house near the University of Tokyo, and accompanied you to complete the cleaning of the house. You were covered in sweat and took a bath in the newly purchased bathtub. After getting out of the bath, the petite girl sat in your arms and browsed the latest data reported by Felix with you. The scene unfolds. Perhaps it was because of soaking in the bathtub for too long. Shiina Kian felt that her head was a little dizzy, and she leaned lazily on Asaba Kazuma. After a while, she turned her head strangely and said, "Kazuma, have you grown a little taller?" Chienyu Kazuma was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "I have indeed grown a little taller. Especially recently, after he obtained Amamiyamai's genetic map, he successfully prepared 2 genetic adjustment reagents. This time the genetic adjustment reagent is a reagent made by Asahi Kazuma through a shortcut. The main raw material is Asahi Kazuma's blood. His blood contains naturally increasing natural gene stabilizing components, which are the effects of the genetic code on his body. The result after the transformation. For Amamiyamai, this reagent is a good medicine to further develop her own genetic talent, but for Asaba Kazuma, it is a genetic complement. The power of the gene code will incorporate this genetic adjustment reagent into the body sequence, and like other adjustment genes, it will be subject to the control of the gene code. In this case, he will be able to obtain Amamiyamai's genetic talent. Judging from the current research, the gene codex still has a lot of development potential. After he can complete the reproduction of the basic version, it may be possible. A trace of ambition flashed in Kinyu Kazuma's eyes. The upper limit of this path is higher than he imagined. Although he has turned part of his research energy to electronic instruments and virtual epidemics, it is to develop the company and expand funds. In the end, he is afraid that he will have to return to the path of genes. The strange thing is that the overclocking mode in Amamiyamai's genetic talent is a bit like some kind of restriction remover. Originally, his 3-dimensional attributes of physical strength/intelligence/charisma were October 10, 11, but after using the overclocking mode, they soared to 15/15/15. This data, in the past, would have taken a long time to successfully reach. Asaba Kazuma had an in-depth understanding of Amamiyamai's overclocking mode and found that this talent was really a bit outrageous. Unfortunately, without him, Amamiyamai would not have been able to reach the upper limit of this ability. If converted into a pure numerical calculation, no matter who has Amamiyamai's genetic talent, they can guarantee a add-2 increase in all attributes. However, the most powerful thing about overclocking mode is not the add-2 increase in all attributes, but the further development of its own genetic adjustment potential. Each new adjustment gene will provide certain attribute bonuses in overclocking mode. Asaba Kazuma obtained nerve reflex strengthening through temporary activities, which gave him an additional 1 point of physical strength. Amamiyamai's psychic interference adds an additional 1 point of intelligence. Heian's absolute pitch sense and extensive knowledge provide an additional add 1 point of physical strength and add 1 point of intelligence. Rina Ishihara's color sensitivity is pretty normal, with an extra add 1 point of physical strength. But her styling is quite outrageous. This talent alone gives add 1 to both intelligence and charm. Coupled with the add 2 effect of all attributes in overclocking mode, he can directly gain an additional increase of add 5 physical strength, add 5 intelligence, and add 4 charm. You know, this attribute is not a linear growth model. When Asaba Kazuma didn't receive any extra physical bonus at the beginning, he was naturally weak, but he was not yet sick enough to read in the morning. At that time, his physical strength was numerically 7 points. By 8 o'clock, he had become a normal person. By 9 o'clock, he had become a monster far beyond the average sports player. At 10 o'clock, he had reached the limit of what a normal person could theoretically achieve. He was a little lucky for a moment. In overclocking mode, another adjustment gene of Amamiyamai increases intelligence, not physical strength. Her physical strength attribute under normal conditions is about 9 points. After all attributes are add 2, she can directly threaten him. But Asahi Kazuma has strengthened nerve reflexes, and in a real fight, she is stronger than Sari, who has strength. But if her other talent is physical, Asaba Kazuma can be sure that with 12 points of physical strength, even if he has strengthened nerve reflexes, he will be directly defeated by Amamiyamai. This attribute panel has increased exponentially. Perhaps it was because he looked a little thin before, but more likely because he was previously weak and his development was affected. Now he has an overclocking mode, which directly allows him to usher in a second development. I vaguely grew another 2 centimeters taller. Asaba Kazuma, who was holding Shianakian, was thoughtful, and said after a moment, "Heian, do you still remember the theoretical framework of the genetic equation I showed you before? Well, if we follow the path of the genetic equation, if it is correct, we may open the door to human evolution, but whether we can achieve the most ideal results depends on what we do next." Asaba Kazuma narrowed his eyes and said, "Do you want to continue applying for the medical major?" Shianakian shook his head and said in a low voice, "Actually, the relevant knowledge in the medical profession is not that useful to me. If you really want to take this path, you may not necessarily need to enter this profession." Qian Yufengjian was thoughtful. In the previous love simulation, Shianakian completed the knowledge reserve equivalent to that of a doctoral student, and that was when she was a sophomore in college. Now she says that she doesn't need to study specifically. "I'm afraid." Kinyo Kazuma was silent for a moment and said tentatively, "Heian, do you have memories of the future?" This time, it was Shianayuan's turn to fall silent. After a moment, she opened her mouth and was about to say something when a cell phone ringtone suddenly came from the quiet room. Asayu Kazuma frowned and reached for the phone. However, Shianakane stood up, took the phone over and said, "It belongs to the eldest lady Genji." Asaba Kazuki took the phone, but did not answer it, but looked at Shianayuan. Shianakian's face turned slightly red, and after a moment he whispered, "Answer the phone first." Asaba Kazuma nodded, and directly connected the phone without avoiding Shianakian. But there was no sound from the other end of the phone. Kinyo Kazuma felt a little strange, but still lowered his voice and said, "What's the matter? Are you sure you didn't betray me?" There was a heavy breathing sound from Amamiyamai's side, with a hint of gnashing of teeth. This nonsense made Kinyo Kazuma frown. What's the situation? However, he still understands Amamiyamai, and if nothing happens, he is unlikely to question himself easily. So he said, "What happened to you was exposed." He was talking about the fact that Amamiyamai had no Genji bloodline at all. But after a while, he remembered that this matter was Amamiyamai's privacy and should not be spoken out directly, so he reminded him again. Heian is with me. Your matter concerns your privacy. If you don't want to reveal it, don't say it. The voice of Amamiyamai grinding her teeth came from the other end of the phone. I know you two have a good relationship, but there is no need to show off your affection to me every day. This is to calm you down. What happened to you? You will come to me and ask me this question. On the other end of the phone, Amamiyamai's voice hesitated a little and finally said. Forget it, let's wait until I finish investigating what's going on. It's really troublesome, so don't resist. When the time comes, tell me what's going on. Maybe I can think of a solution. No, let me check first. After saying that, she hung up the phone. Shianakane said in a funny tone, I now believe that you didn't go behind my back and found someone to fall in love with. Based on the way you talked to her, I believe you even have grudges. There is quite a bit of grudge, Jian Yufengjian said truthfully. It started out as a grudge between me and her, and then it became a grudge between her and me. In short, the situation is a bit complicated, and I don't want to. Shianakane rolled her eyes. She was not really a pretty girl. Although the living environment is a bit simple, the Shiana family has half a foot in the circle, and some things in the circle can probably be guessed. She was basically certain that Amamiyamai would not pose a threat to her, or, she had no intention of threatening her. The relationship between these two people is indeed, as Asaba Kazuma said, more like partners, not so clean at best. Well, I still can't convince myself. A little angry. Thinking of this, she still pinched Jian Yufeng's waist. Why is this playboy so able to offend girls? But after a moment, she still whispered, I suggest you take the initiative to ask Miss Amimiya about the situation. The Genji family has actually been in decline for many years. Then it suddenly rose again and developed to the point where it is now. Behind it is a treacherous and complicated situation. Very. If you can ask her to call you specifically, she must be in a lot of trouble. Asayu Kazuma paused for a moment, and then said slowly, after all, she is also a threat to you, why do you still want me to help her now? Shianakian raised her head proudly, being able to keep you by my side means that I am good enough and we are compatible enough. If we are suitable, we will eventually come together. But if you give up what you were supposed to do because of my slight dissatisfaction with her, then I will feel guilty and feel uneasy. Kazuma, Genji is not an ordinary famous family. Famous families are the product of mutual respect for order, but Genji is not. They have been the rulers of this land since ancient times. If there is any reason to attack Miss Amimiya, someone may die. She looked at Jian Kazuma quietly and said seriously, I can't let her possible way of survival be completely ruined because of my dissatisfaction. Asahi Kazuma smiled. Yes, his wife never loses track of matters like this. Recommend a friend's book. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 176. After understanding Shianakane's thoughts, he let go of some of the restraints in his heart. To be fair, Amamiyamai was a good partner, just for the purpose of being a partner, and he didn't want anything to happen to her. However, Jian Kazuma's eyes soon turned back, so do you have memories of the future? Shianauman. Asaba Kazuma's curious gaze made Shianakane feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, she whispered. Why are you asking me this question? Maybe it's because I have some expectations in my heart, Jian Yufengma said softly. Expectations? Shianakian was a little confused. You answer me first. Kinya Kazuma pinched her cheek, this matter is very important to me. Shianakian was confused for a moment, and after a moment, a look of surprise appeared on her face. Ah, so that's how it is. Asaba Kazuma? No, why did my wife suddenly become the Riddler? Shianakian smiled and said, do you think I have any memories of the future? It's over, it's really the Riddler. But it doesn't seem right either. Looking at Shiana Umi's smiling expression, Asahi Kazuma seemed to realize something. It seems that the possibility is 99%. As for why Hien doesn't admit it, is it because she has already realized it and is now in a state of deducing the future? Question, is Hien very smart? Answer, in short, his mind works much faster than Rina's. Question, is it possible that she realizes she's in a dating simulation? Answer, Hien once guessed that something might happen between them in the future through some of his attitudes and based on the premise that he told her that he could deduce the future. Question, assuming she can get the memory of the love simulation, can she guess the truth? Answer, absolutely, yes. Well, no need to guess, the most troublesome situation has appeared. Hien has most likely seen everything directly. Perhaps noticing the interesting changes on Asaba Kazuma's face, Shiana Kane put her arms around his neck and said, don't you like it? This way we can have more memories together. She looked at him playfully, with a look of tranquility in her eyes. Asahi Kazuma's eyes also softened, and she whispered, you are right, after all, I am too lonely in Tokyo. Lonely. The crowds are bustling. Standing alone in the hustle and bustle, I feel like I have no company. That bustling but lonely feeling forms my stereotype of Tokyo. Shiana Kane thought for a moment, nodded and said, that's true, everyone is busy at work. Well, most people are in a hurry and there is no fireworks. When I was in Kumamoto Prefecture, even if I passed by an old man, I could say a few words of concern. Shiana Kane smiled, it's okay, I'll stay with you. Asayu Kazuma's eyes looked at her, and her eyes reflected Asayu Kazuma's shadow. Asayu Kazuma suddenly had a feeling, as if his heart suspended in the air suddenly landed directly. So he said, well, because of your presence, I finally feel less lonely. Kinya Kazuma smiled, gently lifted her hair and said, so, whether you remember it or not is quite important to me. Yes, Shiana Kane said with some distress, so don't show such an expression. Kinya Kazuma suddenly showed a relieved smile, but the next moment, his expression froze. Hien, then there is a question. I may have to prepare in advance now. Ah. Have you ever considered the question, if I don't protect my partner well, what will she do to me in reality after she gets her memory? Shiana Yuin coughed and began to think seriously about this possibility. Judging from the few faces of Amamiyamai she had come into contact with around Asaba Kazuma, this Amamiyamai seemed to be an insecure girl. But she could also understand that it was strange to feel safe living in Genji. So the question is, if Asaba Kazuma, as a partner, really doesn't help at all, then what will Amamiyamai think after her husband finishes deducing the future? Don't say my Amamiya refused help. The sons in the same dormitory are starving to death, and they say they don't need a loan from their father. How can you really watch them starve to death? So we must help. Shiana Kane quickly sorted out the clues, and finally said with a helpless smile. The relationship between you and Amamiyamai is really weird. Chien Kazuma coughed, it all started when a certain ignorant guy caused my Shura field to explode. Shiana Uman suddenly realized. No wonder she always felt that Amamiyamai always looked at him with a bit of hatred that made her teeth itch. It turns out it's not an illusion, it really does happen. You and Shiana Uman have reached a consensus and confirmed that you will help Amamiyamai. Tonight you and Hien were having sex with each other, but you left early because of a phone call from the company. After handling the company's affairs, you did not return to Hien immediately, but went to Ishihara's house. The scene unfolds. Asahi Kazuma quietly opened the door with the key. He opened the door very gently. When I entered, I saw a bright light. On the sofa in the living room, Ishihara Rina curled up and fell asleep like a wounded animal. The table next to it was filled with food. He quietly walked over and found that the food on the table was very finely prepared, and every dish was Kinha Kazuma's favorite. Kinya Kazuma suddenly felt that her heart ached a little. During this time, Rina Ishihara often followed him out early and back late because of her work in the company. Sometimes, she spends longer hours painting on the computer than Asaba Kazuma. You know, her work efficiency is only slightly slower than Asaba Kazuma herself, but the actual workload is actually far higher than that of ordinary employees. The employees of the animation studio admire Asahi Kazuma like a surging river. This is not only due to the changes Asahi Kazuma has brought to the animation studio during this period, but also because of Asahi Kazuma's work efficiency that shocked the entire company. Just looking at such work efficiency will make their brains feel suffocated. But just looking at the workload, Asaba Kazuma's workload in painting may not be as much as that of Ishihara Rinado. Because he is no longer just a general supervisor, but also the boss of the animation studio. There are some jobs that require him to review and sign, no matter how much he reduces them, which invisibly reduces his work pressure. As for Ishihara Rina, perhaps because animation studio's career is Kazuma's career, this period of time was really hard. Regardless of the meeting, some people had doubts about Ishihara Rina directly serving as the supervisor of the company's important projects. But just for having doubts, being able to dispel them so easily with Asaba Kazuma's suggestion can already explain a lot of problems. Without enough strength and not enough recognition, even in the company, with the animator's urinary temperament, there will probably be quite a storm. Perhaps it was because Asaba Kazuma was so absorbed in looking at the dining table that he forgot the movements of his feet for a moment, and his voice was a little louder. Ishihara Rina, who was lying on the sofa, jumped up like a little rabbit, woke up in a daze, and directly just run towards the door first. Then, with a bang, he hit Kinya Kazuma's arms directly. However, Asahi Kazuma had anticipated this and reached out his hand in advance, hugging her like a treasure. Feeling the reassuring smell and warm embrace, the expression on Ishihara Rina's face, which was originally in a hurry, calmed down a little. Sniff sniff. Oh, Q. As if she noticed something, she raised her head, her face gradually turning rosy. Feng, Kazuma, you are back. She was a little embarrassed. Kinya Kazuma gently scraped her nose and said helplessly, why did you make so many things? Ishihara Rina whispered, I'm afraid you didn't eat and then came over suddenly. Qianyu Fengjian paused for a moment and said helplessly, it's not bad to eat takeout occasionally. I'm afraid you'll be tired if you do this. Ishihara Rina shook her head with a blushing face and said, the food outside is not very healthy. You can eat it at home. Try to eat it at home. If you find it unpalatable, I can learn from you. No, it has never tasted bad. I just feel that my bride will be tired and a little heartbroken. Rina Ishihara shook her head happily. Her knee-length hair exuded a light smell of shampoo. Asahi Kazuma, who was leaning over, liked this smell very much. It always gave her a sense of peace of mind. Come have dinner with me. Yeah, Ishihara Rina's voice became cheerful. Ishihara Rina asked Asahi Kazuma to wait first, then took the food into the kitchen to heat it up. Asaba Kazuma didn't sit down either, she followed in and helped Rina Ishihara heat the dishes. After 10 minutes, the reheated meal was brought out of the kitchen by two people. They looked at each other and smiled, suddenly feeling like a newlywed couple going to the kitchen together. The two of them chatted while eating, perhaps because Asaba Kazuma took Rina Ishihara to the company, they had more to talk about than before. While serving Asaba Kazuma some food, Ishihara Rina whispered, I will work hard at K-On and try not to delay the company's plans. After that, Kazuma wants to create a small-scale idol group and try to let the animation shine in reality, such a plan is too risky. As an animation that is indirectly produced, it really needs to be of high enough quality. Asaba Kazuma nodded and said, "That's right, but it is necessary and must be carefully selected. Music is a very important part of the entire industry chain, but animation is even more important. On the music side, can the music studios under the company really take on the heavy responsibility? They have never released good enough music before. After all, they are not a well-known studio." Because of Asaba Kazuma, Ishihara Rina went out of her way to learn more about the industry. In fact, independent musicians in Japan don't have many outlets. Basically, most of the outstanding composers are affiliated with large companies. Pure singers, unless they can sing, write, and even draw like Kenshi Youngju, really can't survive in Japan. But Asahi Kazuma grinned and said in a low voice, "If it's just music, you don't actually need to worry too much about it, because this is the least thing to worry about." Rina Ishihara nodded and believed what Asaba Kazuma said. If it were anyone else, no matter how much they admire Asahi Kazuma, they would question it to some extent. But Ishihara Rina is different. "Kazuma is the best," Ishihara Rina said in the most determined tone. "Well, so with the best Kazuma to support you, you can do it boldly and tell the whole world about your arrival, Rina Ishihara." Asaba Kazuma rubbed Ishihara Rina's face hard. "Not to mention, it is soft and feels different when you rub it." The planning of K-0N involved a rather outrageous idea by Asaba Kazuma. "You know, a qualified plan is really possible to create a small miracle. Was F4 really good looking back then? Or are you a great dancer? Singing very nicely?" "No, among the idol stars of the same period, F4 can only be said to be above average. There is still a clear gap between them and the South Korean groups that have become popular in the later era. However, the project of Meteor Garden was too disruptive at the time, which directly gave the group a certain influence in Asia. Not to mention Meteor Garden, even the later Meteor Shower, which was super badly modified by a certain Mango channel, really brought a lot of popularity to the actors in it. Why did he choose The Child I Pushed as the opening song before? It's not just about the popularity of Children I Pushed, but I hope that through this gimmick-filled animation, we can tell all the fans who like animation studio that we are serious about music. Whether it is the op idol that caused an uproar, the ending song Mephisto, Queen Bee, or other soundtracks that have been glimpsed in the middle, such as the singing of the girl group of Hoshino AI, they are all giving the audience they implant a subconscious mind. Animation studio is really good at making music. Then here comes the problem. What are the characteristics of the animation project Lelouch of the Rebellion that he put Daisuke Hiramaki in charge of? Answer: even among the masterpieces of the year, the soundtrack of Lelouch the Rebellion is quite good. What if K-On is also successful? That means that in the field of animation music, Asaba Kazuma and his animation studio can really leave a deep enough impression on the audience. For this reason, Asaba Kazuma must find a way to embark on this alternative planning path no matter what. You know, Japan itself is the second largest music market in the world. There is really no reason not to want to get involved in it. But in the field of music, it's really not that easy to get involved directly. It can be said that directly launching the banner of a music company in the local area is sometimes even more troublesome than a foreign monk. After all, both TVXQ and Super Junior supported themselves until they were 40 years old by rediscovering their singing skills in Asia. However, local music, it depends on whether the forces in Japan that control established boy groups, girl groups, individual singers, and even underground idols will interfere with you. Even Yasushi Okamoto's Act 48 cannot escape the risk of going overseas. It can only be said that Japan's entertainment industry is in a terrible state to some extent. Want to break through the layers of blockade imposed by local forces? It's very simple, use them to achieve breakthroughs in unexpected ways, Such as, let anime idol groups shine into reality. Not many people know about this hidden plan, and Rina is one of them. I can only say that thanks to the internet era, it has become possible for some groups to break out of the encirclement and suppression of some decadent and old forces. The premise is that I also cheat in the music field. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 177. The premise is that I also cheat in the music field. From K-On! To the Macross series to Rock of Loneliness. From Your Lie in April to Blow the Euphonium to Girls Opera. From Act 0048 to the Love Live series and the Idol Masters series. The content of music programs has always been mixed, and even like the first episode of Act 0048 and Love Live, looking back, the plot content is difficult to describe in one sentence. However, one thing is unquestionable, that is, the music program itself has potential. The plot content is not rich enough, so I try to find ways to supplement the content. If some of the original music is not good enough, then replace it with music that is more suitable and more likely to cause a sensation. In the era of the internet, the way music becomes popular can be completely different from before, provided that the information carrier carrying the music is outstanding enough. Asabi Kazuma has not joined the platform, let alone established one. Under the current situation, the difficulty of establishing and developing the platform is tantamount to fishing for the moon in the water. In this case, let's change the track and stop playing with you infighting monsters. From now on, in anime music, the rules I say are the rules. It specializes in acquiring music studios and underground idol operating companies for the purpose of recycling. Recruit underground idols with good personalities and obey orders. Rightward arrow. Produce animation. Rightward arrow. Implant high quality music of individuals or groups. Rightward arrow. Pull animation gimmicks and introduce sufficient traffic. Rightward arrow. Make the traffic cash on the music show as quickly as possible, forming the first-class music in the hearts of the audience. Stereotype. Rightward arrow. Transfer a large amount of gathered traffic to the idols cultivated by the company, forcefully break through the platform blockade, and wait for the platform to come. Asahi Kazuma himself didn't have that much time to deal with such an ecological closed loop, but the potential benefits involved were too huge, and he really didn't feel comfortable leaving it to others. It just so happened that during the Children I Promoted project, both the company employees and Rina had enough understanding of the content, and he could feel more at ease when Rina took the lead. Thinking of this, he gently rubbed Rina's face with his chin. Kazuma, it's so itchy. Chienu Kazuma hugged her and said, Sister, you have to work hard. This is the dowry I prepared for you. I will support you with everything you should have. Marry, dowry. Rina Ishihara was stunned for a moment and said anxiously, I don't want to marry anyone else. Marry me. If you don't marry me, how dare I give you the dowry? Ishihara Rina was confused by what Asabi Kazuma said, and could only keep nodding in agreement. Anyway, she only wanted to marry one person and didn't consider anyone else. As long as he doesn't want to leave her behind, just listen to him on what to do. Rina Ishihara's swaying look was so cute, it took her a long time to realize, what? I don't have that much money for the bride price, so sister, you need to earn the money for the bride price yourself, Qian Yufengjian scolded with a smile. No, haven't you already arranged everything? Ishihara Rina looked confused. Just follow your plan and do it step by step, and it will be done. By then the project will be profitable. Can't you just make money? Why do you need to make it yourself? Yes, but there are some people, even if you have arranged everything, you can still turn something that was not stable into a ball of mud as long as you are the executor. So in this matter, only sister trustworthy. Asahi Kazuma hugged Rina from behind, perhaps because Asahi Kazuma accurately hit Ishihara Rina's vital point. Her body was soft and she couldn't use any strength. Asahi Kazuma didn't say anything, and just bit Rina gently. Ears. Rina let out a small cry, then covered her mouth again. Kinya Kazuma saw it funny, and bit her all the way to the ear. Her body trembled more and more. He looked funny. But the action is even more unwilling to stop. It's amazing, he suddenly discovered that whether it was Rina, Hien, or someone who was stubborn and refused to ask for help, they all belonged to the relatively simple little Karami. The main thing is that the skin is thin and easy to penetrate, and the health bar is drained casually. After a moment, he sighed, gently rubbed her soft waist, and whispered, Rina, do you remember the investor we saw at the meeting last time? Rina blinked her watery eyes, nodded and said, she is a good person. Good guy, I gave you a good guy card at the beginning. However, Rina didn't seem to have the concept of a good guy here, so Asaba Kazuma continued to say while suppressing a smile. Something happened to her. As her partner, I feel a little worried, so I plan to help her. Rina tilted her head and said, I'll help as much as I can. Isn't Kazuma always like this? After a moment, a thoughtful expression appeared on her face. She pursed her lips and said, has Kazuma ever had a relationship beyond friendship with her? Kinya Kazuma was a little embarrassed and didn't speak. Rina said to herself, if there weren't some relationships that were inconvenient to tell others, Scenery wouldn't be so embarrassed. Although there are other people besides Miss Shiina, which makes me a little sad. Ishihara. Rina turned around uneasily, looked directly at Kazuma, and said seriously. But I believe that my Kazuma will make such a judgment because he feels the need to help. So, don't think so much and just go and help. Qian Yufengjian was silent for a moment. There were not many complicated emotions in Ishihara Rina's clean eyes, as if she was stating a fact. Her thoughts have always been so simple, so natural, as if every kindness thrown out was a duty. She and Hien have different styles, but they both have the kind of character that once he gives up, he will definitely regret it. That's why he is so unable to let go. In the end, I was a bit of a fool when I was most confused. In fact, shouldn't I have understood it a long time ago? When I hesitated, it often proved that the other option was reasonable. He smiled and said, in the end, I still have to rely on you to convince me. You are indeed my good sister. He rubbed Rina's face, with a doting smile on his face. Just sister, can you answer me a question? Ah, Rina was a little confused and whispered, I can tell you everything I know, but you can't think I'm stupid. If you're not stupid, how could you be stupid? Asaba Kazuma approached Rina's ear and said in a nice voice, so, sister, how much do you remember about the future between you and me? Rina Ishihara. Rina suddenly trembled, as if she had woken up from sleep, showing an uneasy expression. Kinya Kazuma hugged her gently. Sister, I really write everything in my heart, Chianyu Kazuma said with a smile. You won't be angry, right? Won't. Really, it's not too late to be happy. It's good to be able to keep that beautiful memory instead of just adding to the sadness. Rina pouted and whispered, obviously it was me first at the beginning, but now there are so many people. Yeah, it's not much, just you and he. And Kinya Kazuma's expression felt a little guilty. Rina shook her head and said, Kazuma, with your character, it is impossible to leave Miss Amamiya alone in the future. Unless she runs away on her own, I'm afraid she will be brought back by you in the end. Impossible, absolutely impossible, Qian Yufengjian said firmly. She and I are just purely friends now, including preparing to help her now, but I just don't want my partners to get hurt, or even affect the interests of my company. Ishihara. Rina tilted her head and said, I have heard a word before, called the barrier of knowledge and vision. The barrier that is known and seen but cannot be broken through exists in most people. Kazuma is already very powerful. In many fields, you can easily break through this barrier, but at least in love and marriage, you cannot break through. Impossible, Absolutely impossible, Kinya Kazuma said seriously again. I think I can control this matter. Then Kazuma, you won't find Hien. If I guessed correctly, I should be the first person you meet Kazuma to experience the future, right? Qian Yufengjian was silent. It's okay not to recall a lot of things. Looking back, they were really full of loopholes. For a moment, Asahi Kazuma even had the urge to escape from the earth. Fortunately, Rina said this not to laugh at him, but to tell him. If it were really easy for people to control their emotions, then there wouldn't be so many accidents in the world. Kazuma is a gentle person, so as long as it's not for special reasons, it's impossible to give up the special relationship with him. For people who are related to each other, even if your emotions may not be at that point yet. Qian Yufengjian was silent. He didn't know whether Rina Ishihara's words were right or not, because he couldn't judge right or wrong for a while. Not many people can truly recognize themselves. Sometimes, it becomes more true when others evaluate them. So I will definitely go to the point of saving Amamayamai. I'm kidding, before, I just regarded her as an NPC to reward myself. Okay, I really can't say. Asaba Kazuma shook his head, and after a while he called Amamayamai. Once, twice, 3 times. When the phone rang for the 5th time, there was still no answer. Kinya Kazuma frowned. After a while, he paused for a while and did not see Amamayamai call back, so he called again in front of Rina. This time, it didn't take long for the call to be answered. Hello, this is Genji. Kinya Kazuma heard a familiar female voice coming from the other end of the phone. He frowned even more, but he still said calmly, where is Amamayamai? I am her partner, and I need to contact her for some matters. The female voice on the other end of the phone was also very calm. Ms. Mai, I'm afraid she doesn't have much energy to deal with her own affairs in recent times. If you really have something urgent, you can contact the Genji Group Secretariat, who will work with you to deal with Amamaya Mai's related business. That's no need, I will only cooperate with her. Chianu Kazuma put down the phone. After a moment, he dialed another phone number directly. On the other end of the phone was a private detective who often worked with him. Hey, you continued to investigate what happened to Genji 60 years ago. Now I want to entrust you to help investigate another matter to see what conflicts have arisen within Genji recently. The detective's rejection came on the other end of the phone. The reason given by the other side was that Genji might not care about old things, but now it was a bit dangerous for him to directly investigate the internal situation of Genji. It really can't be investigated, Kinya Kazuma emphasized. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. After a while, the other party said a few more words. A smile appeared on Asaba Kazuma's lips, and he said with a smile, no problem, I can add money. He put down his cell phone, spread his hands towards Rina and said, it seems that Genji is still very intimidating to the private detectives who are seeking money at the expense of their lives. A considerable number of Japanese private detectives, especially those with high enough income, have some secret relationships with the Metropolitan Police. Some people even retired from the Metropolitan Police themselves. This group of people formed a large network of intertwined interests. Many times, relying on their internal connections with the Metropolitan Police Department and the secrets of many financial backers they knew, they often felt comfortable in the gray area. But now that I heard some news about an in-depth investigation into Genji, I was still timid. It can only be said that the consortium's deterrent power in Japan is great, and sometimes it is even arrested by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. As expected, it is as Japanese a specialty as mold. Ishihara Rina frowned, with a little uneasiness on her face. The consortium, she is indeed in danger now. Asayu Kazuma sighed, if Genji is determined to take action against her, I'm afraid I will have to make other preparations. When fighting against the consortium, you can't try to hide it, you must try your best to make the matter bigger, and then use your current special identity to obtain the protection of another level of power. Troublesome, but I don't need to pretend anymore, Kinya Kazuma said in a low voice. You start to make relevant layouts. Part of your scientific research results have begun to be delivered at a faster pace. You plan to let everyone see what the shock of cheating is like. Since then, you have tried to contact Amamiya Mai more than once, but you have never heard her voice again. You can be sure that something has happened within Genji. You investigated the related companies managed by Amamiya Mai and found out that she had been removed from her position in each company, so you felt a little more at ease. Soon, the paper you submitted on the new technology of human cryonics caused a small sensation. You posted an update on Little Blue Bird, joking that among the animation people, you are probably the best at doing scientific research, and showed netizens the special admission application given by the University of Tokyo. Netizens are jealous, but everyone knows that you are very capable and a genius far beyond ordinary people's imagination. You have not forgotten your original intention while promoting the new works of Animation Studio. You also thank your partner Mai Amamiya for her strong support. A reporter who didn't know the inside story became curious. Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment and revealed some details about Mai Amamiya.